rolled out at the White House today. That plus $30 billion for a border wall and increased technology for border security are the biggest headlines in the first look at this plan. Not yet a bill or an agreement with Congress. This is the administration's marker as the clock ticks down on a deadline that was part of a deal to end the government shutdown and avoid another one. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel has the breaking details from Capitol Hill with what we know at this hour. Good evening, Mike.
Brett, good evening. Sources familiar tell Fox here are the key points of the White House immigration blueprint. Secure the border, securing both the southern and northern border with a combination of infrastructure, technology, and personnel. That includes a $25 billion trust fund for the border wall system. DACA legalization provides legal status for DACA recipients and other DACA eligible immigrants up to an estimated 1.8 million people. Protect the nuclear family, promote nuclear family migration, limiting family sponsorships to spouses and minor children, and eliminate the lottery and repurpose visas. White House officials suggest the program is riddled with fraud and abuse and does not serve the national interest. The White House starting to roll out its proposal as lawmakers here on Capitol Hill are trying to develop their own plan.
That's what we want.
Lawmakers have been getting an earful from immigration activists demanding a DACA deal now. As the White House prepares to unveil its immigration reform framework, the Senate Republican whip described the various components of a potential immigration deal as being pieces of a puzzle.
I know people are going to focus on one part of it and say, well, we want to do that and we don't want to do the rest. But I think the message from the president, you'll probably hear on Monday, is that this is part of a package.
Last night, President Trump talked about dreamers earning a path to citizenship.
Over a period of 10 to 12 years, somebody does a great job. They've worked hard. It gives incentive to do a great job, but they've worked hard. They've done terrifically, whether they have a little company or whether they work or whatever they're doing. If they do a great job, I think it's a nice thing to have the incentive of, after a period of years, being able to become a citizen.
A GOP senator who has clashed frequently with the president cautiously sang his praises on immigration today.
Who knows if others will try to pull him back. But we'll see. I've always said his instincts are better than the advice that he's getting on DACA.
The Senate Democratic leader shared Senator Flake's concerns that hardliners close to the president could walk him back.
The White House, unfortunately, has proven unreliable and wildly unpredictable. Within a course of hours, they say different things. Every time the president moves forward on one thing, his staff pulls him back and undoes what he said.
And Schumer is painting a scary picture if lawmakers miss their deadline.
This administration will start separating families, taking kids out of school, service members out of our military, workers out of our companies. They will rip them from the American fabric in which they're embedded.
Today, the House Majority Leader said all will have to compromise.
There are going to be things that I probably in this bill that if we all work together that I will vote for that I probably wouldn't write by myself. But there's going to have to be things in there that maybe another side wouldn't vote for.
The White House is urging the Senate to draw up legislation based on its plan and introduce it the week of February 5th. That would be just days before the government's due to run out of money once again. But they believe with these key points, that's the best opportunity for Congress to get a deal on DACA. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thanks. This is another Fox News alert. We're getting late word tonight on reaction to text messages thought lost, but just found at the center of bias allegations against two former members of the Mueller special counsel team. Questions surrounding the FBI. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here tonight with how all this came together. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Brett. Writing to FBI Director Christopher Wray, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, says texts from October 2016 suggest then FBI Director James Comey's chief of staff, Jim Rybicki, believed Deputy Director Andrew McCabe should recuse himself from the Clinton email case. McCabe's wife got more than $700,000 from Democrats, including longtime Clinton ally Terry McAuliffe, for a state Senate race. FBI lawyer Lisa Page writes, Rybicki just called to check in. He very much 100% believes that Andy should be recused because of the perception. Agent Peter Strzok replies, God, Later, Strzok writes, I assume McAuliffe picked up, but that doesn't make sense. He said he was interviewing. Maybe he's headed into private practice. McCabe did not recuse himself until 1 week before the presidential election. The new concerns about the Bureau's impartiality come on the same day new texts are confirmed.
Writing to the senior senators with oversight, the Justice Department Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, who first discovered the anti-Trump texts between demoted FBI agent Peter Strzok and reassigned FBI lawyer Lisa Page, said a forensic review recovered records between December 2016 and May. The letter did not fully explain why senators were told in August the Inspector General had everything, only to learn last week that thousands of records were missing. Before traveling to Switzerland, during an impromptu discussion with reporters, the president chastised some media for avoiding the story.
I do worry when I look at all of the things that you people don't report about with what's happening. If you take a look at, the 5 months worth of missing texts, that's a lot of missing texts.
As the texts were apparently found, the political rhetoric over the 4-page memo documenting alleged government surveillance abuse took a new turn. With the House Intelligence Committee's Republican chairman, whose staff drafted the memo, traveling overseas, the ranking Democrat drafted his own version and took a swipe at the media who are covering the allegations.
They didn't care what was in the underlying documents. They wanted to make a political statement. They wanted to feed the beast on Fox News. They wanted to do what they could to derail the Mueller investigation.
A former FBI agent elected to the House as a Republican said the Democrats' national security concerns are overblown.
I've read the memo along with several of my colleagues. In my estimation, having had exposure and experience with both FISA and Title III wiretaps, that there are no law enforcement sensitive sources or methods that would be compromised here.
In a letter, the Justice Department expressed its own reservations, calling any release of the memo unprecedented and reckless. The FBI and Justice Department want a review before it goes public.
Let us see it first. At this point, nobody in the Senate or the White House or the Department of Justice or FBI has seen this document.
Though the senators can't read the document, the minority leader weighed in.
Today it's this memo. On and on and on. Conspiracy theories with virtually no fact.
Some Republicans were pressed on the wisdom of releasing the memo.
When the public begins to question the integrity of the department and the FBI and conclude in the absence of other information that somehow politics has taken over rather than the law, that's a very serious matter, and we need to get that cleared up through one means or another.
The House Intelligence Committee would not comment on reports. The memo identifies McCabe, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and Comey Bret.
Catherine, on Tuesday, Republican Senator Ron Johnson made a comment on this show that raised a lot of eyebrows to me and then the reaction to it. And today, somewhat sounded like he changed his tune.
We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that.
Yes.
This text message seems to be a comment about secret society was in jest. Do you agree that it appears to be it was in jest?
It's a real possibility.
Saying it's a possibility. Catherine, what are you hearing about the dust-up over those two words, secret society?
Well, we've confirmed the text message was sent one day after the election, and Page writes to Strzok, quote, "Are you even going to give out your calendar? Seems kind of depressing. Maybe it should just be the first meeting of the secret society." Fox News is told this is the only reference in the 384 pages of FBI text provided to Congress last week. But for some context, 3 weeks later in December 2016, the 5-month gap of missing text begins, and no one on the Hill knows what they show and whether they back up Senator Johnson's whistleblower, who claims senior FBI officials held these off-site meetings. So we'll see when those newly recovered text messages are provided to Congress. Bret.
Okay. A story that changes every day.
You
Catherine,
bet.
thank you.
You're welcome.
President Trump is in Davos, Switzerland at this hour, presumably resting after his busy first day at the World Economic Forum. The man behind the art of the deal tried to reassure nervous world leaders that his America First policy does not mean America alone, and that U.S. economic growth is good for business everywhere. Back here at home, the president's lawyer is trying to temper expectations about what the president is and is not willing to do with special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is traveling with the president. Hello, John.
Bret, good evening to you from Davos, Switzerland, where President Trump came to sell the United States as a great place to do business. But it was foreign policy, not economic policy, that took center stage today as the president met with Israel's prime minister. It was the first meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu since the U.S. recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The president with tough words for Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas.
We give them hundreds of millions of dollars in aid and support, tremendous numbers that nobody understands. That money is on the table, and that money is not going to them unless they sit down and negotiate peace.
In a speech 11 days ago, Abbas went ballistic over the planned move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, insulting President Trump, declaring the U.S. has disqualified itself from the peace process. At the UN today, Ambassador Nikki Haley delivered a harsh critique of Abbas.
A speech that indulges in outrageous and discredited conspiracy theories is not the speech of a person with the courage and the will to seek peace.
President Trump today confirmed that the U.S. is fast-tracking the embassy move and plans to have a small facility in Jerusalem open next year. The president insists that by taking the issue of Jerusalem off the table, the peace process could actually accelerate, a view shared by Netanyahu.
This is a historic decision that will be forever etched in the hearts of our people for generations to come. People say that this pushes peace backward. I say it pushes peace forward.
Earlier, President Trump met with UK Prime Minister Theresa May, declaring that despite her recent criticism of his retweeting bogus videos from a UK ultranationalist group, the relationship remains strong.
I think the feeling is mutual from the standpoint of liking each other a lot. And so that was a little bit of a false rumor out there. I just wanted to correct it.
The leaders also talked trade, a common theme here in Davos, as the U.S. delegation promotes its America First policies, hoping to placate skeptical leaders that America First does not equal protectionism.
What's good for the United States is good for the rest of the world in terms of growth.
From his bilateral meetings to an evening dinner he hosted with European CEOs, the president declared his first day here a success.
We are seeing tremendous investment, and today's been a very exciting day, very great day.
Before leaving for Davos, President Trump surprised reporters and his attorneys, saying off camera but on the record that he is looking forward to speaking with the special counsel Robert Mueller.
I'm looking forward to it, actually. There's been no collusion whatsoever. There's no obstruction whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that, but I would love to do it.
The president's Russia point person at the White House, attorney Ty Cobb, said the president spoke, quote, hurriedly as he was on his way out of the White House, but added talks are still underway for a possible interview. But sources familiar with the investigation tell Fox News there is great concern among the president's outside attorneys about him speaking with Mueller. In fact, the president's lead outside counsel, John Dowd, told Fox News tonight that he will be the one to make the decision whether or not President Trump sits for an interview with Robert Mueller. And Dowd says, as of now, he has not made that decision. Bret?
John Roberts in Davos early Friday morning. John, thanks. Facebook says it has found what it calls, quote, insignificant overlap between ad targeting of the Donald Trump presidential campaign and ads tied to Russia-linked accounts. This was part of the written answers submitted by Facebook, Twitter, and Google to questions from the For the Record during the November 1st Open Senate Intelligence Committee hearing on Russia disinformation efforts. We are learning tonight just how much Iran has been testing its ballistic missiles since signing the nuclear deal with the U.S. and its allies in 2015. Correspondent Rich Edson has a Fox News exclusive tonight from the State Department.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is traveling Europe, convincing allies to join the Trump administration's more aggressive stance against Iran. And now a new report from the Foundation for Defensive Democracies and obtained by Fox says it bolsters the administration's case as it, for the first time, details Iran's missile activity since the signing of the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement. The report says, quote, Iran has launched as many as 23 ballistic missiles. The Islamic Republic has invested considerable time, energy, resources, and prestige into its ballistic missile program. The group focuses on international policy research and opposes the Iran deal.
Iran is looking to signal its defiance to the international community in multiple ways, and ballistic missile flight testing is just one of them.
The group says there are substantial challenges to tallying Iran's launches. There is no unclassified accounting from the U.S. government, and Iran often tries to mislead the West on the details of its program. The report says since 2016, Iran has launched as many as 16 missiles considered to be nuclear capable. President Trump cites those weapons, Iran's financing and support of militants throughout the region, and expiration dates in the Iran nuclear deal to justify his recent threat to withdraw the U.S. from the agreement. And he has support from another longtime critic of the deal.
You said that if it's fatal flaws are not fixed, you should walk away from it, and I want you to know that if you decide to do that, then we will back you all the way.
Though the president says he'll keep the U.S. in the deal if, by May, European countries agree to changes in Iran policy.
And I'd say there was a pretty wide measure of agreement on the European side about the need to look at what Iran is doing on the ballistic missile front and to work out what we can do collectively.
European countries maintain the Iran deal is working. They want to leave it alone, though they are engaging on possible actions to counter Iran's ballistic missile program. Whether that's enough to keep President Trump in the Iran nuclear deal is unclear. Brett.
Rich Edson live at the State Department. Rich, thanks. The Dow hit another all-time high this morning on the way to another record close, gaining 141 today. The S&P 500 was up 2 for a new record close, the 13th in 2018. The Nasdaq lost 4. New home sales, though, fell 9.3% in December. Experts blame the winter weather and predict a rebound in the early months of this year. Mortgage rates are up for the third week in a row, a sign of expectations for faster economic growth. The interest on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage stands at 4.15%. Republican lawmakers in Pennsylvania are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to block an order by the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ordering the redrawing of congressional district boundaries. The Pennsylvania court ruled they were politically influenced. GOP lawmakers say the state court illegally usurped its authority. The hunt is on right now for 2 suspects in the fatal shooting of a Colorado sheriff's deputy. Breaking news, national correspondent William Lajeunesse is monitoring the situation from our West Coast newsroom.
The dragnet around Denver continues tonight as police charge one man and search for 2 others in the shooting death of 32-year-old deputy Heath Gum.
Walking, that's when I heard the gunshot. That's when I seen police activity and just craziness ensued.
7 p.m. Wednesday night, police respond to an assault in progress. 3 men flee. Police give chase and find one hiding behind a house.
When deputies caught up to the male pulled out a handgun and started to shoot at our deputies, striking one of the deputies in the chest.
Deputy Gum, a 5-year veteran of the Adams County Sheriff's Department, died at the scene.
It is a great, incredible sadness that we report that our deputy was transported and pronounced dead at the hospital.
This video shows police taking the suspected killer into custody. 2 others, described as black or Hispanic males, remain at large.
We're still currently looking for 2 additional suspects that were involved with this incident.
A procession of law enforcement led the hearse carrying Deputy Gum's remains to the coroner. Residents joined officers who braved the cold to pay their respects.
Officers don't get a lot of respect. They don't also get a lot of honor of what they do for us in protecting us to be safe.
Less than a month ago in neighboring Douglas County, Deputy Zach Parrish was shot and killed as he tried to talk a mentally ill man out of a house. Gum becomes the 7th officer killed in the line of duty this year, 4 by gunshot.
Flags are now flying at half-staff throughout the state. Deputy Gum leaves behind a wife and family. The man arrested in his murder is expected in court tomorrow. Brett?
William, thank you. Up next, still trying to turn the lights back on in Puerto Rico after 2 major hurricanes. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 32 in Chicago, as an Illinois lawmaker proposes a state ban on tackle football for children younger than 12 years old. The law would be named after Dave Durson, a defensive back on the Chicago Bears' 1985 championship team who was found to suffer from the brain disorder CTE after killing himself. The sponsor of the bill says science shows the dangers of playing football before turning 12 are not worth the risk. Fox 2 in Detroit as Michigan State University's president resigns amid an outcry over the handling of allegations against former school and USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Luana Simon's announcement came hours after Nassar was sentenced to up to 175 years in prison for molesting young girls and women. Victims say the school ignored complaints about him. And this is a live look at Orlando from our affiliate Fox 35. One of the big stories there tonight, remembering the 7 astronauts who died in the explosion of the Space Shuttle Columbia. It happened 15 years ago next week in the skies above Texas, just before a scheduled touchdown in Florida. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.
Doing the best they can with limited resources.
I mean, I'm still studying without power, and I have friends that literally are studying by flashlight.
I haven't even seen a truck nearby. I have poles. The poles are still down. Lines are down. I feel like my area has just been forgotten.
Power crews say they have to prioritize. Hospitals, police, and fire stations come first. It is a massive undertaking that everyone agrees is going to take more time. Brett?
Laura, thank you. We'll continue to follow this. It will look a lot more colorful the next time you fly over Denver. That's because the city now has the most stringent green roof requirements in the nation. Correspondent Alicia Acuna tells us it's a lot more than just aesthetics.
It's very expensive and very challenging, especially in a climate like Colorado, where it's dry.
Developer Jim Neenan says the initiative passed in November that requires green roofs means new design and engineering challenges because Denver now has the most stringent and far-reaching green infrastructure requirements in the country. The idea is to combat what scientists call the heat island effect, which happens in built-up urban areas. Rooftops, pavement, parking lots, and roads absorb the sun's rays. The energy later radiates back up and out into the city, making the area several degrees
all over. You can't just do one here or there.
Some of the great benefits about a living roof.
The California Academy of Sciences living roof in San Francisco is 2.5 acres of native plants.
Just like when you sweat or if you get wet in the pool and get out and you're a little bit cooler, the same thing happens with living plants on a living roof.
But Kathy Barsnar, who opposed the Colorado measure, says voters may not have realized the expense and the amount of maintenance green roofs require.
You need to be replacing the individual ones that die. You need to be double checking the amount of soil erosion you have, the amount of water that needs to be on there.
Chris Waldom says even with costs, they have also been a selling point for attracting tenants to their development.
It's something that they are really seeking out. When you're in a high-rise office building, you become so disconnected from what's happening outside.
Both sides acknowledge the upfront costs of cultivated roofs, up to $25 per square foot, plants not included. Brett?
Alicia Acuna in Denver. Alicia, thanks. Up next, 1.8 million illegal immigrants could see a pathway toward legal status under a new plan rolled out at the White House today. Our top story at the bottom of the hour, next. Plans for border security, $30 billion for a border wall and increased technology there. DACA legalization, 1.8 million illegal immigrants given a pathway to legalization, protecting only the nuclear family when it comes to chain migration and eliminating the lottery and repurposing visas. The president's insistence on a wall is clear. Tonight there's more vocal opposition, however, from environmentalists. Correspondent Casey Stiegel is in McAllen, Texas, looks at both sides of the story.
Tucked away in South Texas.
We're as far south as Miami here.
A place unlike any other.
This has the largest diversity of plants and animals of any refuge in all of North America.
Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge spans more than 2,000 acres along the Texas-Mexico border. Segments of President Trump's wall are supposed to be built here.
The refuge that was created in 1943 to preserve and sustain wildlife will become a death trap.
Chapman says the wall will essentially put all wildlife on an island, limiting their food supplies and trapping them in a flood zone. He contends the barrier would prevent animals from reaching higher ground when waters rise, so anything that could not fly out would drown.
To lose something like this is unthinkable.
Just next door,
if the Border Patrol says that they have to have the wall, we will live with the wall.
Frank Schuster's massive farm ends where the international border begins. Security is his top concern, with people and drugs being smuggled through his property almost daily.
My granddaughters play in the backyard back here, a couple of 100 yards away from where the wall will be. They will be more secure.
Still, Frank remains torn. The environmental impacts worry him, and his own family will have to sacrifice something deeply personal. So right where you're standing, Donald Trump's proposed wall would be built.
Right here. Yep.
The Schusters could lose more than 1,000 acres of their prosperous farmland.
It's the most productive ground we have.
Yet, holding back tears, Frank says he'd do it if it meant every American would feel just a bit safer. Legal challenges are already starting to stack up in court. Various environmental groups, not just in Texas, pulling out all the stops to either try and halt construction altogether or at least buy more time to come up with a new plan. Brett?
Casey Stiegel along the border. Casey, thanks. To the Pacific Northwest now, and more defiance from Washington state over illegal immigration. The governor is ordering state officials to stop giving out information about people in the country illegally. Correspondent Dan Springer reports from Seattle.
Getting a driver's license in the state of Washington does not require U.S. citizenship, but the state did record where applicants were born. When Democratic Governor Jay Inslee learned the Department of Licensing was sharing that information with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, he put up his own wall to block that cooperation.
We believe the people we have helped educate, who've been here for decades, deserve to have the protection we've already given them. And it's most unfortunate that the president and his ICE is essentially threatening them with deportation.
The DMV was treating ICE exactly like every other law enforcement agency, providing collected information only when given a name and specific crime being investigated. Now, ICE alone has a much higher bar.
We have stopped releasing information relative to immigration violations, and from here forward, we are going to require a court order to do such.
Inslee has also hired a special assistant to make sure no state agency gives ICE anything not required by law. Some Republican lawmakers are angry.
This is like trying to make this a sanctuary state. If we're not going to allow federal agencies to go after those that are committing crimes in our cities and our communities and our state, that's what it amounts to.
ICE's acting director Thomas Homan said policies like Inslee's might violate federal laws against harboring illegal aliens. Illegal immigration hardliners agree.
He is picking and choosing which law enforcement agencies he's going to give information to. He doesn't get to do that.
An ICE official tells Fox News these licensing inquiries are never a blanket fishing expedition, but targeted criminal investigations of those deemed to be a national security risk or public safety threat. Now the job just got harder. Brett?
Dan, thank you. Our first look at the president's plan on immigration and the immediate reaction to that. We'll get the panel's thoughts when we come back.
Issue of immigration. The bipartisan group of moderate senators should continue trying to find a consensus. The White House, unfortunately, has proven unreliable and wildly unpredictable. Every time the president moves forward on one thing, his staff pulls him back and undoes what he said.
Over a period of 10 to 12 years, somebody does a great job. They've worked hard. It gives incentive to do a great job, but they've worked hard. They've done terrifically, whether they have a little company or whether they work or whatever they're doing. If they do a great job, I think it's a nice thing to have the incentive of, after a period of years, being able to become a citizen.
Well, the administration is negotiating, and they put down their first marker on an immigration reform plan today. It includes $25 billion trust fund for the border wall system, $5 billion additional for technology, also northern border improvements and enhancements, providing legal status for DACA recipients and other DACA-eligible illegal immigrants, adjusting the time frame to encompass a total population of possibly 1.8 million individuals with a 10 to 12-year path to citizenship, requirements for work, work, education, and good moral character. Promote the nuclear family migration by limiting family sponsorships to spouses and minor children only, ending extended family chain migration, and eliminate the visa lottery system and reallocate the visas to reduce the family-based backlog and highly skilled employment backlog. Now, their immediate reaction to this, Rachel Bade, who's been on our show a lot up on Capitol Hill, House Republicans not happy with this new White House immigration plan. Quote, "This is the beginning of the end of the GOP majority in the House. In a year when the Democrats impeach Trump, we can point to this moment," one Republican on a call tells me. So with that, let's bring in our panel. Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for Axios; Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host; and from New York tonight, Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. This often happens whenever anything happens in immigration. Any specifics come out, and the reaction is loud and visceral. Jonathan, there is a sense that after this was rolled out, there were some calls being made from the right side of the president's flank.
Right, and two sources have just told me that Stephen Miller just got off a conference call with a group of hardliners on immigration, and it was, I'm told, a very feisty call. A lot of them hate this proposal, so he's angered a lot of people on the far right because he gives such a large amnesty. But then I've also been talking to some progressive immigration activists who are in close touch with Democratic leadership, and they say it's dead on arrival because it's, in their words, such a radical proposal with such massive cuts to legal immigration. Some of them say the biggest cuts since the 1920s. So the White House seems to have angered just about everyone, from what I can tell. Tom Cotton, the senator, put out a relatively nice statement about it, but it's the issue of immigration, as you point out. You always anger everyone once you start putting specifics out there.
But isn't this what everybody has asked for, Leslie? To get specifics, to start the negotiation with actual data, points on the board that say, here's our proposal, what's yours?
Yes, but the problem with this is that on Friday, when you had Senator Schumer meet with the president, this is galaxies apart, and you need the Democrats on this. You need bipartisan support for any immigration reform, and we know this. You cannot hang, as they are, the DACA, the Dreamers, over the cliff with this. This is not only over-ambitious, this is impossible.
What do you mean over the cliff?
Well, basically,
you're expanding the DACA population to 1.8 million in this proposal.
You have a 10 to 12-year program, 10 to 12 years? Bret, that is far too long. One, you were cutting 5 out of 7 programs that are in place now for immigrants. You are putting people that are looking right now as immigrants or who are fleeing persecution as refugees. You're not addressing those issues, and you're not addressing terrorism with anything with regard to a wall, the southern border, or the northern border, because you're not addressing radicalized Islam and ISIS and the internet.
Wait a second. Now, the White House said this is phase 1. There are many other elements of immigration. This is their first marker out there, and they are doing something that conservatives, Jason, as just noted, will have a hard time with.
Yes, there's something, as someone said earlier, something in here for everyone to hate. Actually, Bret, we've seen a lot of these in previous proposals. A lot of this was in the 2013 Gang of 8 bill that passed the Senate but failed in the House. Passed the Senate with bipartisan support, including support from Senator Schumer of New York. And in that bill, you had a multi-year path to citizenship. You had funding for more border security. You had an elimination of the diversity visa and so forth. But I think we are getting at what the real problem is here, which is that we don't know what the administration is going to do about overall levels of immigration. Right now, we take about 1 million a year. Around 70% of that is chain migration. I think there are a lot of Democrats out there that said, okay, you want to change the balance, less chain migration, use some of those to give to people with skills, people with education, but you do have hardliners like Stephen Miller, like Tom Cotton, who want an overall reduction in legal immigration, and that is really where the divide is, as I'm being told right now.
Yeah, Leslie, I didn't mean to cut you off. The bottom line here is that it doesn't seem likely, just by this reaction, that this is going to get all wrapped up by February 8th.
It's not, and that's what I mean by, putting them over a cliff. Look, this is not a one piece of legislation fix. I mean, we all know this, left or right, and I think we need to address the dreamers and not say, hey, address the dreamers in exchange for whether it's a Democrat or Republican doing that. We are even seeing in the language here, Bret, that the president is willing to concede there isn't going to be a wall for the entire southern border of our nation. We are seeing that in the language of what has been put forth out of the White House today.
And I think he said something similar. Jonathan?
Well, internally, the calculus was, at the very least, that they need something that they can credibly call a wall. If they don't get that, Trump knows that it's intolerable for his base. The question about legal immigration, to me, is what's going to be the biggest sticking point on the left. But also, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the language around interior enforcement, the increase in ICE agents. That's something that's unacceptable to a lot of progressives. So it's going to be very hard for them to hash out a deal. I think the space where the deal is possible is if Democrats give Trump enough money so he can build something that he can credibly call a wall, and that there is some give and take on chain migration, then a deal, I think, is possible.
Also, Bret, I think the real deal...
if you would.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jason. All right, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the real question here, we don't know the answer to, is whether Democrats really want a deal or whether they want this issue for the midterm elections. Dick Durbin reveals what the president said in a private meeting to blow up any discussions. Chuck Schumer's kind of come out and said a wall is off the table, knowing that that will end discussions. Do the Democrats really want a deal, or do they just want this issue to bash Republicans with come November?
That's a great question. Next up, allegations of government surveillance abuses and secret society.
Their full-time memory care. Best of all, it's a free service. There is never any cost to you. Senior living has never been better, and there's never been an easier way.
We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that.
Yes.
This text message seems to be a comment about secret society was in jest. Do you agree that it appears to be it was in jest?
It's a real possibility.
It looked crazy. It looked delusional. It looked paranoid.
And then Senator Johnson today said that he was connecting the dots. Yes, it could be a joke in the text. Those off-site meetings could be completely harmless, telling NPR that. We're back with the panel. Jason, we are getting word that these text messages, or at least some of them, are being recovered. But it did seem like the secret society got a lot of coverage and reaction.
Yeah, I think in this case, the Senator Johnson was jumping the gun here. In the context, it doesn't seem that this was a serious effort of secrecy. I mean, you're text messaging on a government-issued phone. That doesn't make a lot of sense. There are multiple investigations going on here, Bret, both in Congress and, of course, Robert Mueller. They need to run their course, and I think Republicans are risk what just happened to Johnson happening again if they don't let this situation run its course. They also seem much more worried about it. They look more worried than even the president, who, of course, is offering to meet with Mueller.
Yeah, Jonathan?
Well, look, from what we've seen so far from these text messages, there are definitely concerning text messages. Concerning enough, by the way, that it provoked Mueller to take this guy off the investigation. So there is substance there, but you know, the escalation from zero to we have a deep state coup in the FBI and it's a coup plot against the president, and, you know, drawing the line from text messages to a smear across an entire institution. I think there's dangerous territory, and I agree that some caution needs to be exercised, particularly when it comes to things like memos, when we have characterizations without seeing the underlying intelligence.
Yeah. Leslie, the other side of this investigation from the Republicans' point of view is this memo that we still have not yet seen, but it seems like from the House Intelligence Committee that it may be coming out soon. There is also now a Democratic version of that same classified memo looking at thousands of pages of classified material.
Look, Bret, I'm all for putting it out there and letting the public decide. And I think that people who like the president and want to see everything as a grassy knoll or a conspiracy are going to see the secret society as such. But from what I see, if something is secret, then why would you text about it? I think this is clearly what it is, in jest, playing into the paranoia, if you will, of the boss that they were dreading coming into office, two people that work together and were having a relationship. And I think that this is just, I think it's become ridiculous in this current climate that we're in politically with regard to everything everyone says for or against the president and this administration.
Yeah, but let's make clear, Jason, that some of these texts, as Jonathan pointed out, do lend themselves to asking serious questions about an insurance policy and all different aspects. I mean, these texts, as we're getting more of them, let alone the 5 months that we may be recovering now, are significant.
Yeah, yes, certainly. Obviously, there's very worrisome stuff here, including the fact that that Peter Strzok possibly had a role in changing language that exonerated Hillary Clinton. That we had FBI agents that were supposed to be investigating an email scandal that were more interested in getting Hillary Clinton elected or stopping Donald Trump from becoming president. So yes, this is not something we can gloss over. I just think more caution than we've seen, at least on the parts of people like Senator Johnson, is called for here.
All right, I have 10 seconds. Down the road, Jason, Leslie, Jonathan, does the president do an interview with Special Counsel Mueller? Jason?
Not if his lawyer has any say in it, no.
Leslie?
I think he should, especially if he has nothing to hide.
Jonathan?
I think he will, but the way that interview is conducted is a big TBD, because it's clear his lawyers are very nervous about it.
We will follow all elements of all investigations.